Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. A lot of conversation, a lot of chatter around this Florida State program heading into 2024 and how they replace all the NFL talent that is leaving this Florida State program. And I mean, it's a very fair conversation to have, right? You lose Jordan Travis, Trey Benson, Keon Coleman, Johnny Wilson, a lot of big-time contributors at this Florida State offense in 2023, no longer with this program. And I feel like a lot of people across the country just write off this Florida State offense heading into 2024. What I want to dive into is what makes Mike Norvell an elite football coach. It obviously starts with how he leads men. And you talk about just one of the better leaders that we see in the country. That's Mike Norvell. But more importantly, as a football coach, Mike Norvell is one of the best in the game at looking at his personnel and designing an offense that can be effective with the skill that he has. And although the skill is at a little bit of different spots in this Florida State offense in 2024, I'm really confident that Mike Norvell is going to design an offense that leans into this offense's strengths heading into 2024, kind of the opposite conversation that we've had with Jimbo Fisher, where Jimbo Fisher had a kind of offense that he had success with Jameis Winston and just never changed it. It didn't matter about the personnel. It didn't matter about the quarterback. Jimbo Fisher was going to run that offense no matter what. That's what I think led to his downfall at Texas A&M. You look at Mike Norvell, you look at his time even going back to Memphis, he looks at his offense and says, hey, where are our strengths? Where do we want to lean into? And then he schemes and designs the offense going from there. Want to look at this Florida State offense and kind of talk about the strengths that Mike Norvell might lean on heading into 2024. Really excited to get into this one. Before we do, and as always, just want to say thank you to you guys and to the Florida State fans. It's been a blast talking this program, whether it's in the portal, whether it's the recruiting trail, whether it's previewing 2024. The amount of support y'all show the boys, it means the world. If you guys do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. And much more importantly, would love to hear how you guys are feeling about this conversation in the comments section. And without further ado, let's get into this one and let's talk about how this Florida State offense might look a little different from what we saw in 2023, where they kind of leaned on, for lack of better words, Jordan Travis, Keon Coleman, Johnny Wilson, that explosive passing attack that we saw for Florida State in 2023. Where is the number one strength on this Florida State program heading into 2024? I would argue for the first time in Mike Norvell's tenure is probably on the offensive line, at least in my opinion, not only from a depth standpoint, but also from an experience standpoint. You look at this Florida State offensive line, so many of these players have played a ton of football over the last couple of years. It starts with left tackle Darius Washington, over 2,300 snaps during his career. Maurice Smith, 2,700 snaps. Jeremiah Byers, 2,700 snaps. You're bringing Richie Leonard, who's played the last 2 seasons in the SEC. I look at this Florida State offensive line and say, that's probably the position group that heading into 2024, I have the most confidence in. And what does that mean? Is I think Florida State is going to lean on the rushing attack significantly more than what we saw in 2023. Now, Florida State had success running the football, but they didn't run the football that much. When you have Jordan Travis, when you have Keon Coleman, Johnny Wilson, you want to make sure that you're giving them opportunities to impact the football game. I think we have some question marks about the wide receiver room, which I still think is going to be pretty dang good. It's just not necessarily proven. That being said, where are our known commodities? Where are our known strengths heading into 2024? I think it starts on the offensive line, specifically the newfound physicality, adding guys like Richie Leonard and TJ Ferguson. These guys, I think why Florida State went out and grabbed them is, hey, we want to physically impose our will in the rushing attack more in 2024. We're going to go get two guards that absolutely road grade. Talk about a guy like Jeremiah Byers, even at the right tackle spot, although might lack a little juice in pass protection, does not lack any juice in terms of getting off the line of scrimmage and moving people off. And so you look at the offensive line and say, it's a lot of 320-plus pound humans that are built to move bodies off the line of scrimmage. And I think the second strongest position group that we have for Florida State is probably the running back room for a couple of different reasons. And I want to start with how diverse it is. When you look at a Florida State offensive line that we think is going to be one of the better units in the ACC, then you look at the running back room and say, we can get so creative in terms of how we run the football because we have so many different bodies that can do so many different things. You start with kind of your all-purpose running backs, guys like Roydell Williams, guys like Kazai Holmes, complete running backs that can do a lot of different things. I would throw in true freshman Cam Davis. From what we're hearing in fall camp, he's going to be hard to keep off the field, specifically with the physicality that he brings to the table. You just look at a picture of Cam Davis. This kid is put together. And then you look at guys like Jalen Lucas and Lawrence Tuafili as, I would probably best describe them as offensive weapons, as X factors. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Florida State have some 2 running back sets. I mean, get very creative in terms of how they attack opposing defenses running the football. And that's not to mention DJU as his quarterback. What separates DJU and Jordan Travis? Jordan Travis, obviously a faster quarterback, maybe a little bit more explosive as a runner. You couldn't run Jordan Travis all that much because he didn't have the frame that DJU has. You go back to DJU at Clemson his last season, ran the football over 150 times. Clemson leaned in to DJU's strengths running the football. And again, is he as explosive as Jordan Travis? No, probably not, but he's downhill. He's a battering ram and is going to keep this offense on schedule running the football. And so you look at Florida State and say, they only ran the football 50% of the time in the 2023 season. That was 82nd in the country. This was an offense that relied on throwing the football often. I look at Florida State in 2024 and the conversation of, oh, how does this Florida State offense rebound from losing guys like Keon Coleman and Johnny Wilson? And I say, well, I think Mike Norvell is going to look at this offense and say, hey, where are our strong suits on offense? The offensive line and the running back room. I think you're going to see Florida State probably be in the top 30 in terms of how often they run the football in the 2024 year. And I think where the X factor is, and this is probably kind of the conversation of how good can Florida State's offense be. We know that they're going to run the football effectively. It's going to be hard to see them not run the football effectively. That being said, can they marry that passing attack effectively? And I think what's really exciting about Florida State's wide receiver room is, although there's not a ton of proven production in that room, there's a lot of traits specifically working down the field. You look at almost like West Virginia's offense last year, where it was very run heavy, but when they did decide to throw the football, they were going to throw the football 20 plus yards down the field. Jordan Travis wasn't asked to throw the football down the field often. And quite frankly, that was not one of his strong suits, right? Only threw the football 17% of his time or attempts, 20 plus yards down the field, and only completed 31% of those throws. You look at DJU, he completed 43% of his throws 20 plus yards down the field in 2023. DJU has a stronger arm, is going to access the deeper third a little bit better. And then you look at the wide receivers and say, hey, what are the physical and athletic traits that our wide receivers have? They're either really, really big or really, really fast. You look at Malik Benson, 10-4 in the 100-meter dash, one of the fastest wide receivers we'll see in the country. You look at a guy like Hakeem Williams or Elijah Moore, bigger bodies that can go up at the catch point. You look at a guy like Jalen Brown, burner, 10-5 in the 100-meter dash. This Florida State wide receiver room, at least in my opinion, is built for working vertically down the field. You have a quarterback that has a big arm to get to football down the field. If Florida State can really get this rushing attack going in 2024, forcing safeties to kind of forcing opposing defenses, I guess you'd say, to put more bodies in the box to try to stop what Florida State's doing running the football. If Florida State can be a team that when teams do bring all those extra bodies in the box, they can throw it down the field and kind of win with those wide receivers vertically, that's kind of the best case scenario for Florida State on the offensive side of the football. So you have all these conversations, and these conversations are fair. How does Florida State replace all this NFL talent that's moving on? I think it's going to come down to Mike Norvell leaning in to the strengths and known commodities of this football team. And that's going to be the rushing attack and the wide receivers that can work vertically down the field. That's how I think this Florida State offense is going to look in 2024. And if that kind of comes to fruition and this Florida State offense runs the football extremely effectively, forces defense to put more bodies in the box, and then work vertically off that, that's going to be an offense that's going to be really hard to stop. At the end of the day, Mike Norvell is going to look at this personnel and say, how can we structure an offense that uses our best football players more often? And I think this is how it's going to look. Really excited to see it play out. Well, we got 2 more weeks till Florida State's kicking off in Ireland. I'm fired up for it. Appreciate you guys rocking with the fellas. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later.